Hey everyone, we're going to be starting with 12.3, not 12.1. We're going to do 12.4 after this, and then circle back to 12.1 and 12.2, because I think the order is a little bit better. With that in mind, let's get started. So we're going to start with a simple question. How do you write numbers down? And in the current day, we have a system called the Hindu Arabic numeral system, which is just fancy talk for the system we use already. So if you've been writing numbers down in any capacity, then this is the system you've been using. That's just the name. This isn't the simplest way to write down numbers, and it's definitely not the first one, but it is the one we use. And we're going to get into why we use it a little later. So when I say it could be simpler, what I'm referring to the fact is that our current system actually uses a bunch of symbols. Specifically, we use 10, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. The placement of where we put these symbols changes what they mean. So what I mean by that is that the 5 in the number 3635 is different than the 5 in the number 5909. In the first example, it just means 5 by itself, but in the second example, it actually means 5,000, and that's worth noting. The ordering of the symbols is specific, which is true of the previous example too, but something like 61 isn't the same as 16, even though they both use the same symbols. And it's worth noting that we can simplify this considerably by using a tally system, which you've probably used before in some capacity. So in a tally system, we actually only have one symbol, which we often just write as a vertical line or I or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't actually have to be that simple, it can be anything, but the key thing is there's really only one symbol. To write a number like 7, I just have to copy that tally that many times. So in this case, that's 7. That's 42. And now, when you look at 42, you say, oh, that's kind of hard to read. And so to make it a little easier, we use grouping, where we take 5 tally marks and we just make one of them diagonal. The fact that it's diagonal doesn't change its meaning. It just means it's easier to read. But even with this version, this system doesn't really handle big numbers well. So if you look at that example, that's actually only 175. And the fact that in order to find that out requires a little bit of calculation, even if you try to count smart, it's still going to take you a little bit of time, and that's not great for a number system. But there is a better way. So let's say you wanted to talk about a number that was bigger than 175. Well, we have a method. We just have to use more than one symbol, and that should make sense. So this is a simplified version of the Egyptian system for writing numbers. I say simplified because if you look at the actual pictures they used, they were more complicated than these images. But this is fine. For the record, when we're doing any of the homework or quizzes or tests on this material, you will always have this table. It will be in the question, so you don't have to memorize this at all. In this system, 2 vertical lines represents the number 2, but now we can talk about different numbers with different symbols. So if you took, say, 3 of those spiral things, which is apparently a scroll, then that would be 300, because 100 plus 100 plus 100 is 300. And we can combine these, which we'll show in a second. Combining these symbols is just an addition problem, so something like this is the number 300,010, because we have 3 burbot fish, and they represent the number 100,000, and we have 1 heel bone, and that represents the number 10. And when we add those together, we get 300,010. It's worth noting that these don't have to be in the right order. Like, the fact that the burbot fish are on the left is purely for this example. You could have easily put the heel bone in the middle or on the left side, and it would have not changed the number, which is kind of convenient. let's do some examples. So we'll ask, what does this mean in the Hindu-Arabic system? Which again, remember, that's just our current modern-day number system. In this case, these symbols translate to, well, we've got 2 pointing fingers, which means 2 times 10,000 or 20,000. We've got 1 scroll and 2 vertical staves, which means 20,000, 102, which is the right answer. In this case, we've got 2 vertical staves followed by 8 different scrolls. You can count them if you'd like. In this case, that means 2 times 1, which is just 2, and 8 times 100, so that's 802. Remember that they don't have to appear from left to right, or even in sequence. And that can make things a little confusing, but ultimately it makes it a lot easier to write numbers down. Then we'll have a slightly bigger number. In this case, we'll have 1 astonished person, 1 lotus flower, 2 heel bones, and 2 vertical staves, which stands for 1,000,1022, which is right there. Now, there are problems with this system that you might be able to see immediately. The first is that since they can be read in any order, it might be easy to mess up when reading them and miss some important details. In addition, we're going to be seeing a lot of numbers with the same symbol over and over again, and maybe we might come to the conclusion that having 8 symbols that all mean the same thing in order might be a little confusing. And we can even do that with 9. Imagine how bad 999 looks. And, well, you might see a problem with the system. So in 12.4, we're actually going to look at a system that's got a little bit more structure that was used later in history, while it still keeps a lot of this same symbol meaning group of numbers kind of thing. 12.3 isn't a particularly complicated section, but also remember that the table that I've provided in the previous 2 slides is also provided for every single homework, quiz, and test question that asks about Egyptian symbols, so don't memorize them. Just remember that putting the symbols together just means addition. If you do have questions, you can ask me via Canvas or email me. The 12.4 notes, which are on Roman numerals, are going to be posted later today or tomorrow, and then 12.1 and 12.2 will be posted a little after that. The slides are all going to be accessible in the Files tab of Canvas, and you'll see when that happens. So, have a great day.